1, start it.
Hello, and welcome to the question and answer session for the Plant Science Day virtual event 2020. Here you can ask questions of our speakers, and we will also have other scientists and technicians available to respond to questions. If you do have a question, we ask that you type it into the box of the question and answer session, which you will find at the top right of your viewing screen. Type the question in and we will try and get to the questions as quickly as we can. We have a bunch of people here available to answer questions. And we will start off. I'm going to go with a couple of questions for Dr. Jeff Ward. And so I'm going to ask him to turn on his mic and speaker, and I'll put him into the item. So, Jeff, what are the most common trees in Connecticut?
Oh, that's a great question, Brian. And the most common trees we have here in Connecticut depends a bit on what size you're looking at. If you're talking about all trees down to 1 inch in diameter, our most common tree is actually red maple. We've got millions and millions of red maple. After red maple, the most common tree in Connecticut is northern red oak, a very different species. It can become a very majestic tree. What we do have, well, if you just look at the smaller trees, though, a lot of people know about red maple. You might know very much about, in fact, we have a lot of black oak out there. Black oak is becoming increasingly common, not only in Connecticut, but throughout southern New England and over into Pennsylvania. And unless we're able to improve the regeneration of oak, unless we can get more oak seedlings to grow on the majestic oak trees, the forest that our grandchildren are going to see is going to be predominantly red maple and black birch.
Great. Next question. Have we lost any of the plant species to the invasive insects and diseases, such as, the emerald ash borer and the effect on the ash in the forest?
I got to tell you, a really unfortunate thing here in the United States are invasive insects and diseases. They haven't killed every single tree out there, but they've become essentially almost extinct out there. American chestnut was one of the first ones we lost. That used to be 25% of the trees in many Connecticut forests. 1 out of 4 trees is American chestnut. Now, can you find chestnuts out in the wood? Certainly you can. They get any bigger than 1 inch or 2? Almost never. I mean, occasionally one will get bigger, but you really just don't see them out there. The next big species we lost was one you probably hadn't heard about. We're not quite sure why, which is, why am I suddenly blanking out on white walnut's common name? Butternut. Butternut was actually a really common species when we looked at surveys 100 years ago. That one's lost, I think, because of another disease that came in. And then we lost American elm. And some of us remember American elms. Some of those out there listening might remember American elms. New Haven was the elm city because these elms formed majestic cathedral-like avenues along the cities that were just absolutely gorgeous. But a disease, Dutch elm disease, which is transmitted by a beetle, primarily, also by rootgrass, came in and killed off our American elms. And then we lost, at least in the southern part of the state, we've lost a lot of our hemlock because of a combination of hemlock woolly adelgid and also elongate hemlock scale. They're both still here, but in the southern part of the state, it's pretty rare to see hemlock out there. Almost all of our hemlock stands have been killed. We're not quite sure if it was a native disease or an introduced disease, but if you go back to roughly 1989, dogwoods were the most common understory species we had out in the forest. And then in a matter of a year or two, almost every dogwood in the state was killed by a disease. We're currently in the process of losing ash, an entire another genera, not just one species, but all of our ash trees out there because of emerald ash borer. The sort of scary thing is is that there's also Asian Longhorn beetle, which was first found out in Amityville on Long Island, birthplace of many weird things like the Amityville Horror. But that one has potential to kill or greatly reduce all the maples in the country. That's the one the federal government is literally gone federal on. They can come into your backyard and cut down all your maples and your willows and your poplars. Because imagine if this insect were to escape out into our woods and we were to lose all the sugar maples and the red maples out there, which give us the vibrant fall colors and have so many benefits to our ecosystems. So the unfortunate bottom line is on all this is that, in fact, we have lost a lot of tree species to invasive insects and diseases. Oh, let me mention two other quick ones before Brian jumps in. One, some of our viburnums out there are actually declining pretty severely because of viburnum leaf beetle. And another one insect you might seen if you grow lilies, tiger lilies knows, is there's a lily beetle out there, which is very much devastating all the wild lilies we have out there. If you've ever had a chance to see Canada lily out in the woods, it's one of our truly spectacular wildfires, and that's really being impacted by this non-native invasive insect. Gail might actually have a comment on the lily leaf beetle. Uh-oh, there's dead air. So if you have any questions out there, please type them in. We'd be more than happy to answer them. Brian, am I still on? Are you coming on? I think we're having technical difficulties. So if anyone else out there is a Cleveland Indians fan, type in. You've got one right here. There aren't few of us in this part of the world. Brian? Hello, hopefully nobody's making a YouTube video of this. I see Gail over there. Gail, do you want to unmute and talk about tiger lilies?
Yeah, well, the tiger lilies or the lily leaf beetle. Yes, it's a menace to ornamental and native lilies. They're voracious eaters, and the youngsters will cover themselves in fecal material to protect themselves from being predated on by birds. Usually activity begins when the lily flags are about sometimes as early as 2 inches tall, and they would just literally eat the foliage to the ground. For homeowners, as far as protecting their lilies, it would be best to, early on, you could use netting, like bridal veil, as a barrier, creating little sleeves of bridal veil, which you can then slip over the flags and then loosely tie around the base of the flags with a tie, such as the tie that you would use for a plastic bag that goes over a loaf of bread, for example. So you're mechanically excluding them. The other thing is daily inspection, and with gloves, pull off these little mobile fecal objects, which are the youngsters, by hand, so hand picking and cleaning off. But that's a lot of time spent. And again, you can use organic pesticides. There's one called neem, and another one is Captain Jack's, which is spinosad. Those are also helpful. The neem puts them off eating the flags because it's distasteful and it reduces appetite. The other one, spinosad, has an interesting history. It was discovered in the sugarcane fields in the Caribbean. And it's a certain bacteria, and they found that they got a compound from the excretions of this particular bacteria. And it, again, is a broad spectrum but organic pesticide that could be also applied to foliage. I think that's it for me with the lily leaf beetle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I could add for hand pickers. The adult beetles are very, very good at dodging being picked. The moment they feel threatened, a lot of times they kind of will tuck and roll and drop into the undergrowth in an attempt to escape. So I found a good tactic for handling them is to get a small cup of soapy water. So water with a couple of drops of dish detergent to break the surface tension. And when you're going out to do any hand picking, before you attempt to grab an adult, hold the cup underneath the leaf that the adult's on, so that when it's disturbed, if it rolls off the leaf, it'll take a dive straight into that soapy water, and it won't escape and then come back to potentially lay more eggs.
Yeah, but the drop technique is a very common beetle skill set for escaping danger. Weevils are notorious for this. If you're hunting, for instance, black vine weevils, it's a good idea to put a white sheet, bed sheet, underneath your rhododendron, and the black vine weevils will go possum and drop to the ground, and it's very difficult to catch them unless you have some fabric underneath to find them on. And so the white sheet with a little brown weevil on can certainly help you pick them up. And again, the technique of a cup of soapy water is ideal for this kind of management.
Great, thanks. We're going to see if we can get possibly Rose Hiskus on to answer the zucchini question. So turn on your video, and I'm sending you live. And so the question was about the zucchini. What is the best way to keep zucchini healthy and the best way to remove leaves? Ask people questions, and then I'll say that we're going to go back to Jeff after this.
Okay, so zucchini, keeping zucchini healthy. There are a number of insects, the squash vine borer, squash bug, and then also some of the powdery mildews or whatever that can get our zucchini. I practice what's called succession planting with zucchini. So I'll put in, a couple of hills as soon as I can, end of May, and then in 3 weeks do another planting, so that if the first planting goes down to, say, squash vine borer, I can have another crop coming up. So succession planting. You can also do some of the insecticide sprays, say Pyganic or even a tomato vegetable dust, and get that down in the center of the plants once a week, because the squash vine borer is a clearwing moth that comes out at night and will lay eggs right down at the center of the plant. And then that little critter gets inside and starts eating, and your whole plant will wilt. So you can use some insecticides. I'm not sure what is meant by how do you remove the leaves. If you do have the squash vine bug, you can just manually, rub the undersides of the leaves and get rid of those bronzy red eggs that are on the undersides of the leaves. If you need to trim the plant to be able to see to harvest or whatever, you can just simply use a pruner and, even remove diseased leaves or just leaves that are inhibiting your ability to harvest the plant. So, thank you. Back to Jeff Ward.
Is there a question?
Brian had said to go back to you, so I was just going to do that.
Sounds good. Well, if any of our viewers out there have a suggestion on how to clean up a messy office, I am all for that. One thing with the storms that we had yesterday, you noticed you probably had a lot of branches are down. You know, once you clean those up, take a look at your tree, because there could be some branches, in fact, that have cracked and haven't quite broken off yet. Maybe something you can evaluate on your own, and maybe something you'd want to have an arborist come take a look at. Especially if that branch is overhanging your house, is overhanging your driveway, is overhanging an area where you or kids or your pets play. You know, you might want to have those branches, even though they haven't fallen off yet, if they've got a pretty severe crack in them, chances are within the next couple of years they are going to fail and they could present a real hazard. So just something to take a look at when you're wandering around your property over the next couple of days.
Jeff, there is a question that birch trees lean seem weak. What can be done?
Oh, well, I'll tell you, birch trees, you'll see them lean a lot. You see a lot of trees lean a lot. And what happens is, that actually is a great question. But if you look at trees, trees are like most plants. They grow towards the light. So where you see birch trees especially leaning is when they're on the edge of a property, or if they're on the edge of a forest or on the edge of the woods. They'll grow towards the light, and birch is not this exceptionally strong wood. So when we get our heavy wet snow loads, and Lord knows we get them every bloody year, it seems like, or if we get an ice storm, that makes those trees bend over even a little more towards the light. And then once that process started, those trees just cannot straighten themselves back up. So what you need to do is keep an eye on those trees, and if it looks like they're at the base of the tree where they're going into the ground, if you see that it's not level, but it looks like the ground is starting to shift up a little bit like that, well, that means that that tree's root system is failing and that tree's going to fall over. And actually, that thing where you just look at where the entire ground is tilting up, that's not only with birch trees, that's with pretty much every tree species. That's a real key giveaway that that tree is going to have to be removed in the near future, because it's starting to fail. This is when one of us should be a talk show host. While we're waiting for the next question to come up from Brian there, one thing, even with the storm coming through, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but when you've been driving around Connecticut, it's just how dark green almost all the trees have looked. You know, there are spots where we've had a drought, especially here in central Connecticut. We are really hoping for the rain. We didn't get any. But look at how dark green those leaves are. I think we are being set up for a truly spectacular fall foliage season. You know, it starts in northern Connecticut up on Bear Mountain. If you ever go hiking up there, it's a great view of, some days you can see up to Vermont, so you can easily see Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York, some days Vermont. But we'll start seeing the colors up there at the beginning of October. And then it will gradually shift its way down. Like I say, I think we're being set up for an incredible fall foliage season. And it'll work its way down south so that in the middle of the state, it's generally, you know, around October 15th, it's some great fall color. And hopefully by then we'll all be able to get out and drive around and look at things. And what's interesting is that down in the coast a lot of times, we don't have, you know, full fall color until right around Halloween. And, you know, it never really dawned on me until I took a videotape of my kids a long time ago on Halloween. So, you know, we have that first flush of fall color comes around, and it's primarily the maples and the birches where they're yellows and oranges and sometimes red. But one of the foresters in state, Larry Russo, pointed out to me a long time ago, we actually have a fall foliage color season here. And that's when the oaks and the hickories, about a week or two after the maple and birches change. And they've got those beautiful oranges on the oaks, the hickories have the yellows. And then it almost starts having just a great contrast with the white pines and the hemlocks in the northern part of the state where we still have hemlocks to maintain green. And it might seem a little counterintuitive, but you know, the best time of the year to see when those oaks are in color, the best time of day, is late afternoon when we get that low sun angle and you get more red colors in there. It can be just absolutely spectacular.
Okay,
Well, see,
I can take a pesticide question if it's okay with everyone. A question came in about how do you know which pesticides to use in the United States? And pesticides in Connecticut work through a section of the Department of Environmental and Energy, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. There's a pesticide division, and they work with the chemical companies to register which pesticides are going to be available for sale in Connecticut. And so when you go to a garden center and look for something that says for use on vegetables and insects, that product has been researched by both the federal EPA as well as the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and they have agreed to allow that product to be registered and sold in Connecticut. And one change recently in Connecticut is our pollinator law that has changed which insecticides in particular we can use. There's a group of insecticides that are systemics, which means they can enter a plant in the roots, and then with the flow of water they will move upward in the plant, and the worry is that they will get into flowers and be harmful to bees. And we're doing a lot of research on that. Rich Coles is looking at these systemic insecticides and whether they indeed do hurt the bees. So when you go shopping for pesticides, that is the process that has been happening, and those are the ones that get on the shelves in Connecticut stores. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Kirby Stafford. I would add to that remember, you should always read the label, and every legal pesticide here in the United States will have an EPA registration number on it. Remember, the label is a law, and the label provides you directions on how to use a pesticide appropriately, how to apply it, what its target is, and so forth.
There is also another class of pesticide called the FIFRA 25Bs, which don't have to endure the rigors of scientific inquiry. When you are developing a pesticide for use, either for professional or general public use, it usually takes about 10 years from the lab bench to sale for a pesticide to come to fruition. The 25B, the FIFRA 25B pesticides can take shortcuts. They generally use materials that are not classic chemistry, and often can be somewhat unproven. So there's always caution when you're working with a FIFRA 25B pesticide.
Yeah, I would add that most of the 25B is EPA's list of minimum risk materials, and people can formulate these compounds under certain conditions into a product, as Dr. Ridge was mentioning, do not require EPA registration. However, they may require state registration. But a lot of these are marketed without being vetted. In other words, they don't have to prove their efficacy before putting it on the market. So you'll see a lot of these products will be advertised for tick control, bed bug control, deer repellent, or other uses. And so until they're actually screened or researchers have a chance to actually test them for their efficacy, it can be kind of like just buyer beware or be cautious because they may or may not be effective. Most of these are based on plant essential oils. Some do have some effectiveness, but others do not. Anyone else want to pick up on that thread?
Shall we introduce?
Hi, we do have another question from the public. Can someone talk about ways to replace lawn with native species that are more useful for pollinators?
I can take that.
Thank you.
Personally, what I am doing is slowly enlarging my landscape beds and decreasing the amount of lawn. If you have a lot of money and a lot of labor and energy, you can rototill up your lawn and get a meadow mix, and you'll be able to irrigate and get that established, doing your soil test to find out fertility needs and following those results for fertility and for pH, any lime requirements needed. But I would suggest going slowly and taking small steps, even mowing your lawn less and maybe letting, just various things come in, the yarrows or the plantains or, things that some people call weeds are still useful to pollinators, and then gradually, deliberately include natives that are insect and pollinators and so on will use for food, but just going slowly. And Charlotte Pyle from the Natural Resource Conservation Service has some very good publications on native plants. They can be found at the Invasive Plant Working Group website, and also Kim Stoner of the Ag Experiment Station has some publications on our website about pollinator-friendly plants throughout the growing season, so that you can have things in March and April as well as in September and October. Anybody else have anything to add on that one?
We'll move on to another question, I think. We have a question from all the way from Florida. So we have somebody watching from distance. They wanted to know about avocado trees. And they bought from a nursery. They were grafted. They seem to be coming along fine, but there's a bit of mottling on the leaves and stems, or the mottling on the stems, and the leaves have web-like strings. Some leaves are being eaten by some type of bug. And so any tips about growing avocados? I think possible. I'm not sure who would be best to handle it, but you want to try that one, Rose? Or if someone else wants to chime in?
Okay, I could try that one. I've personally grown avocado myself, just playing with a seed that I remained after buying a fruit in the grocery store. But first, mottling of stems and leaves, you have to look at possible disease, you have to look at possible plant nutrition, viruses, fungi. I definitely would have a greenhouse if I want to grow avocados in Connecticut here. We're much different from the native range of avocados, obviously. But given COVID, we've been doing so much diagnostics via digital images. So if you can send myself or Gail Ridge or Young Howe some good shots of your avocado plant and the various problems, give us the one shot of the entire plant and then go for close-ups of the various sections that are having problems, the leaves and the stalk, webbing on the stems. I mean, there's any number of insects and even just dust cobwebs that can be on the plant, but getting a paper towel with some water and just wiping the plant down to get rid of these webs, and then just see if they return. But yeah, get us some photos if you can. Thanks.
Great, thanks. I think now we're going to switch and do a couple questions about our hemp program and the hemp talk. So if Terry and Walt would turn on their cameras and they can chime in. And we'll start off with a question on what is the difference between hemp and marijuana?
So Brian, I could take that question if you want. So both are cannabis sativa, and so they are the same genus and species of plant. They're different varieties, however. It's kind of like if you're a grower out there of tomatoes and you have cherry tomatoes and beefsteak tomatoes. They're both tomatoes. They look different. They're used for different purposes, and the texture and the type of the commodity is a bit different. That's kind of the difference between the two. Hemp actually contains a lot less THC, and it's not allowed to contain more than 0.3% THC, whereas marijuana will contain much higher contents of THC. And that pretty much wraps up that question.
Another question is it legal on the federal level at this point?
It is legal to grow hemp in at the federal level. It's not legal to grow marijuana at the federal level. It's legal. Hemp can be legally grown as long as the state in which it's grown is a state plan, and that state plan must meet the federal requirements of the Farm Bill that was passed in December of 2018. That's kind of what I have on that, Brian.
All right. And finally, we'll ask one question and then move on to some other questions that are coming in.
Okay. Sure.
What changes is the state expecting to regards to the implementation of the USDA hemp guidance policy?
So right now, the USDA has a hemp guidance policy out there, and they've revised that policy, and there's a new policy that's going to go into effect effective November of 2021. Actually, so it doesn't apply for most of this growing season, and I believe that's November of 2020. I said that date wrong. One of the primary changes will be that, like, whereas in the past growers were allowed to collect their own samples in Connecticut, they're not going to be allowed to collect their own samples for testing anymore. And the Department of Agriculture, our Connecticut Department of Agriculture, is currently trying to figure out who's going to collect the samples and how that's going to be accomplished. But right up till now, there's no decisions have been made on that. The other main change in policy that the USDA set is that that's in regards to how the value of THC is reported on the final report to the customer. The new requirement is going to be that we have to report exactly a THC measurement that we find in laboratory, as opposed to what we've been doing in the past. And we've just been putting that it's been below the 0.3% THC threshold for acceptability. And that's pretty well it on that, I think. Kind of sums that up.
Okay, thanks very much. I'm going to now go for a question to Young-Hao Lee, who's on, do blue hydrangea need to be mulched in the winter with straw or burlap to protect the buds during the winter cold?
Okay, that's a very good question. Yeah, I don't know if you can remember that we had the winter injuries on hydrangeas flower bud. So that means 2016, almost nobody got the hydrangea blooming because it's the winter injury. Yeah, definitely that the burlapping can help protect that from the winter injury. Maybe one side of the plant you can block this strong wind, especially those hydrangea bushes standing on open area, no protection. So that can help to protect them, to protect the flower bud, so you can get the blooming. And also maybe you can wrap it's a whole canopy, not just one side. But you need to make sure that you open it when temperature warms up. But I don't think that the mulch can help to prevent that issues. Mulching may help to keep the soil moist. That can help, and also can protect the root damages from the cold temperature, but not flower buds. Thank you.
Thank you, Young Hao. We have a couple more cannabis questions, so we're going to go back to Dr. Walt, to Kroll. If you can turn his camera back on. The first question is Delta 8 THC legal federally, and can it be sold in retail establishments?
As far as I know, I believe it must be. I don't know the answer to that question if Delta 8 is legal. My colleague Terry Arsenault might know that answer, but I'm not positive on that. So I would have to say, I don't know. Sorry, can't help you on that.
Terry, any comments?
I think that legally that marijuana is defined as the Delta 9 THC, so I don't think it covers the Delta 8, but I would have to verify that.
Okay, we have another question about hemp here, and that is, how many hemp samples does the CAES received so far, and what is the turnaround time? And you can talk about mostly last year. I know we just started to get samples in this year, and you can mention how we process them quickly we get through samples.
So last year we received about 100 samples from about 36 different growers in the state. We generally can turn samples around in 24 hours, sometimes 48 hours. We know that the results are time sensitive because growers only have a 2-week turnaround from the time that they collect sample until the time that they have to harvest the crop. So we've been making our best effort to get that done as quickly as possible.
Thank you very much. Okay. Let's go back to Dr. Young. We'll go back to Dr. Ward, I guess, and can ask him about the impact of deer on forests.
That is a great question, and deer have a huge number of impacts on forests. We can start out by deer, and actually along with turkeys and some other ones, eat a lot of the oak and beech acorns out there, so it really reduces the number of seeds out there to try to grow species like oak and hickory. But deer have some other impacts you might not think about. They eat the wildflowers, flowers, just like if you're a gardener, when deer come in, they eat your flowers. But when they eat the wildflower flowers, and actually they'll eat them when they're seeding too, then you don't have new seeds to start new plants. And wildflowers can live for a long time. In fact, you might not know something like a trillium actually has a life cycle and a lifespan about similar to humans. Trilliums can be up to 16 years before they actually start flowering. It takes them a long time. And then they can live for 70 years. But, plants aren't immortal, so you need to have seeds out there. If deer are eating all the flowers and seeds, you don't get new plants. One of the other things the deer will do is they'll just mow down an entire forest. And, we've been on some forests where there's been no hunting, and you can see 100 or 200 yards through the woods. Just because they've eaten all the wildflowers, they've eaten all the shrubs, they've eaten all the young trees. And that opens it up to another problem, which are invasive species. So you have all this wide open space underneath the trees where nothing's growing. But some of the invasive species like Japanese barberry, burning bush, wineberry, They really thrive in those conditions, but deer won't eat them because they're poisonous. So that's how we end up getting a lot of those invasive species out there getting established. It's just they don't have any competition. And then another effect that deer have on the forest is, why am I suddenly blanking out? Well, when they do trampling damage, there is increased earthworms. Oh, the other impact that deer do is, we did a weird study about 10 years ago. So I read this paper where people collected deer poop and put it in the fridge and then found out they could grow honeysuckle seeds. So Scott Williams, who works at the station, and I went out there and collected almost 600 pellet samples, put them in the fridge. My wife thought we were a little nuts. And then we planted them out in the greenhouse. And we were surprised. We found 89 different species where the seeds can be eaten by the deer. They go through the deer's digestive system, the deer defecates them, and then seeds grew out of those deer pellets. Now, the scary thing about that is the majority of species, over 50% of the species we found, were not native to the United States. So the species that are invasive are not only the plants themselves are resistant to deer browse, but the deer will eat the seeds of these plants because those aren't poisonous. I mean, plants want their seeds to be spread, and then deer will end up pooping these seeds out all over the woods and spread them. And we found that on average, a deer could carry a seed for a little over a kilometer, so about half a mile, because deer take a while to digest before they defecate them out. While most birds actually don't carry seeds very far. You know, if you're a bird and flying, you want to get rid of those excess seeds pretty quick. So birds will actually tend to regurgitate their seed, the seeds that they ingest, right on the edge of the woods. So birds tend to either defecate or regurgitate seeds right where they're eating them or right on the edge of the woods. They don't tend to carry them into the forest interior. And we found that's a major role that invasive plants move into interior forest. We also found one plant that deer don't eat, including they don't eat the seed, Japanese stiltgrass, which is becoming a major problem. But those seeds stick to deer legs. And deer, like a lot of the animals, will groom themselves. They'll ingest these seeds while they're grooming themselves. Those seeds will pass through their digestive plant, and then those seeds will germinate on deer pellets.
Thanks very much, Jeff. I think we'll move on to a couple questions for Curdy on the history of Plant Science Day.
Okay, well, I hope everyone has had the opportunity to view my presentation on our 110th anniversary of our Plant Science Day. I should point out there is a distinction. This is our 110th anniversary, celebrating the time since our very first field day that was, held 110 years ago. But it's not actually our 110th field day or Plant Science Day, because there were a few occasions when this event was not held. And a couple were when we celebrated our 75th anniversary and our 50th anniversaries. And also there were 3 years during World War II when our Plant Science Day or field day was not held. Do we have any other specific questions related to our Plant Science Day?
I was on mute. Sorry. If there is no actual Plant Science Day, is it still possible to visit the farm?
Yes. Our farm is open during the normal work week of Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 4:30. People are free to walk in. We also, at that time, they can visit our nursery garden and our bird and butterfly garden as well. So, and a lot of our local residents will actually do morning walks through the farm. But we do ask that you refrain from disturbing research plots for obvious reasons, and simply enjoy the great views of Sleeping Giant that you can obtain from our farm.
And finally, one more question about Plant Science Day. Why is it always on a Wednesday and the first Wednesday of August?
Well, that's an interesting story because many years ago, one of our scientists who does research in climatology actually just crunched some numbers to find the day that was the least likely day to get rained out. And that first week in August came up to be one of the time periods when we had the best chance of actually having a sunny, storm-free Plant Science Day. Now, obviously, that hasn't always occurred, but for the most part, most of our Plant Science Days through the year have had actually fairly decent weather, sometimes a little hot, but other than that, for the most part, sunny skies.
Great, thank you. I'm going to come back to Jeff again because we have another question for Jeff.
Go ahead. You said you had another question?
I went mute before I got to the question. I said the question was, I read that coyote urine can be used to deter deer. Does dog urine do this as well?
A great question, and again with Dr. Scott Williams, we did a study on that about 10 years ago on putting out various urines out on plant, and actually a whole bunch of other repellents. And we have a great picture of a buck eating a ewe. It was either one night or 2 nights after we put the coyote urine on. And people say, well, geez, aren't they going to be afraid because there's coyotes out there? Well, the thing is, coyotes marked all over their territory. And unless that urine is really fresh, you know, like half an hour or so, chances are that coyote is miles away by the time the deer comes out there. If you're really trying to keep your plants protected, one thing you want to do is you want to rotate through different products. Don't just use just one. None of the products that we can legally buy are poisonous. So the deer will learn after a while, if they're hungry enough, and some of us live in areas where there's plenty of hungry deer, they'll learn that they aren't poisonous. There was one forester I know who used to grow peppers and said the deer never ate any of the habanero peppers that she had growing out there. And then one year the deer nibbled on a little bit of a jalapeno, and a week later they cleaned out all the jalapenos. So they found out even though jalapenos are really hot, they do add a little bit of a zest to a meal.
Great. Thanks very much. Let's move on to go back to some THC questions. So this one is for Walt. Why don't you always analyze for THCA and THC separately as other labs do?
Well, sure, that's a good question, Brian. When the USDA came out with the hemp guidance originally in the Farm Bill, they specified that the sum of the THCA and the THC be reported, not just one or the other. From a practical standpoint, it doesn't really matter because we have different methods that can separate and test for both THCA and THC. But what we wanted to do is develop a rapid method, because remember, a rapid method is key to getting the test results out as soon as possible. And to be able to do that, we rely on gas chromatography. Gas chromatography is highly reliable, and it has the advantage that it converts any THCA in a sample to THC, so that we can take one instrument measurement, and actually get the result rather than having to do any summing of results. So it simplifies things, and it also is much more rapid. Our liquid chromatography method takes each run is about a half an hour, whereas our gas chromatography method, we can process samples in less than 10 minutes. So that's basically why we're looking to just do THC by gas chromatography rather than both.
Thank you. I would like to remind our viewers, if they have questions, to please type them in. I will ask one more question of Dr. Kroll, or perhaps it can be best answered by Ms. Macenti, and that is, what kind of seed is good for growing hemp and better for growing hemp? Terry wants to talk.
Okay, let Terry have this question, Brian. That's a good one.
It's a difficult question to answer because I think that seed producers are really just getting started in producing hemp seed. So as of now, there's a lot of different varieties of hemp, but they're not that reliable in terms of the amount of CBD and or THC that they produce. So I think that it's good to do a lot of research on your product, ask for certificates of analysis, and also look for input from other growers, because we do know that there's a lot of differences between these varieties, and the genetics of these varieties have not necessarily been well established. That's all.
While we're talking about seed, do you want a little bit of mentioning of feminized versus non-feminized seed?
Sure. So cannabis sativa has male plants and female plants, and they're totally separate plants. The primary producer of CBD and THC are the female plants. In order to get those plants without any seed in them, because that's how you maximize the amount of CBD in the plant, you want to keep the males out of the field. The easiest way to do that is to grow either feminized seed or clones of female plants. If you plant male and female seed in the same plot, what you end up with is a lot of work in going to make sure that the male plants do not mature and produce the pollen, which will then produce the seed. So we found last year that when we planted non-feminized seed and we had to trim out the male plants, that you have to visit that plot every 2 or 3 days in order to keep those male plants from forming the pollen. That takes a significant amount of effort. So we found it much, much easier to plant the feminized seed. Of course, the feminized seed does cost quite a bit more. So that would be our recommendation.
We also have a question about whether the hemp oil supplements or topical applications have any real benefits of pain management or to help sleep. And I would point out that we are not really doing research on the use side of items. We are looking at the growing side. I don't know if you would care to comment on that as well, but that's really our area of expertise and what we've been tasked with doing. But you can comment on that as well.
Certainly, if anybody has a medical need for something, they should consult with their doctor. While we understand that cannabis is a natural plant, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have real effects. And to answer those kinds of questions, you should talk with your doctor.
Agreed. We'll ask one more question on the hemp and then move on to something else. And that is hemp a viable crop for Connecticut? So we're talking about fiber and not CBD.
So fiber requires a lot of area to grow and generally produces the male and the female plants, because the fiber, you get the same amount of fiber out of male and female plants. The issue with that in a small state like Connecticut is that it's very hard to grow enough fiber, enough plants to ship that material off and have it processed into some sort of rope or cloth. We really don't have the infrastructure in the state to support that industry at this time. And in addition, producing those male plants will also cause a problem to anybody who's trying to grow cannabis for hemp nearby. These are wind pollinated plants, and the pollen is known to travel at least 5 miles. So we have a very small state with a lot of different broken up fields, and it would be difficult to maintain those boundaries in a state like Connecticut.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go back to Dr. Lee Young Howe for a couple of questions. And what I'd like to ask Dr. is, I saw a sudden drop off of my red maple trees in June. What do you think might have caused it?
Yeah, actually, this spring we had very wet weather conditions. That might be the reason to causing that sudden defoliation. Because there is a common fungal disease we call anthracnose. Every year we may see that, but this year so severely infected, so small leaves turn brown and dry and falling off. Because we received numerous images and the samples and the phone calls to report this kind of issues. So we had big issues in red maple defoliation in June. So that's because it's anthracnose disease. Maybe Jeff, you can add something?
Yeah, what I was going to add is red maples tend to produce a lot of seeds every 2 years. And I think, what you were just describing, we saw the anthracnose out there. But this is also a year when red maples produced a fair amount of seeds. And in years when they produce a lot of seeds, the crowns look really thin. And we saw that out in the woods, even in places where there wasn't any obvious disease. So, some red maples got a 1-2 punch. They produced a lot of seeds and didn't produce a lot of leaves. And they got hit with diseases. So that, like I said, wasn't very good for our red maples out there.
Another question for Dr. Younghao was on privet bushes, which showed brown spots on leaves and early defoliation. I want to know what happened and how to prevent it from happening again.
Yeah, I think that's also because that's the wet spring condition this year. So there's if you see that's a brown spots on leaves and then sudden defoliation, it's possibly because it's a fungal disease. We call it Alternaria fungal leaf spot. So we received several samples and also I examined in the lab. I found a lot of spores coming out from the brown lesions. So that's due to this wet spring conditions. Yeah, to control these issues, you may spray some fungicide. There are some organic options you can use. There's some kind of like the neem oil, copper product, and also some other chemicals you can use to spray. But most of the fungicide application, that's just keep that new growth healthy, but it's a hard. So for the falling leaves, you have to remove those falling leaves from the site, put in the trash, because there's a lot of leaves. Spores can be can produce from the leaves, brown leaves, and then transmit to the upper part, infect the new leaf. So clean up that area, spray fungicide, you can get the healthy new growth. Thanks.
Thank you. Going back to Dr. Ridge for a couple of questions. The first question is, does boric acid mixed with sugar provide a benefit placed in small containers along the foundation of the home of eliminating carpenter ants?
Boric acid, all insects don't have livers. So when an insect ingests boric acid, they can't shed it. They can't defecate it. So there is a technique where you basically use sugar as a Trojan horse and a syrup, which is basically liquidized sugar, is an easy fluid for the insects to drink. And so if you add 3% boric acid to a sugar or syrup of volume, you can sneak the boric acid into the carpenter ants' systems without them being aware of it. They're somewhat skittish and very fussy eaters. And so if you had a higher concentration of boric acid, over 3%, they'd pick up on it and would not
touch it. So on the market is taro, and that's been manufactured with the right percentage. So I would suggest that people buy the taro products rather than trying to make a home brew, because you may not be successful because you may not have the ability to get the right balance between the volume of sugar and the amount of boric acid needed. It is also very difficult to go into solution as well. Boric acid doesn't like to go into solutions, and it can be another hurdle in making a homemade product.
Yeah, Brian, I can respond to that question. I can testify to that. On Gail's advice, I purchased that product and or a similar product and set it up around my house and put small amounts of it here and there, and didn't see any ants really swarming on the product. I mean, you're not going to see that, but it definitely worked. It wiped them out. It wiped out the colony that was in my foundation.
Oh, glad to hear that it worked.
But don't expect to see ants pouring over it, because I don't know if they come at night or whatever, but I seldom saw more than one ant drinking out of these, and I had 3 of them around my house.
Yeah, the biology of the ants is that when you're seeing carpenter ants during the day, they are only the scouts. They don't represent the colony. They are nighttime feeders. So when you're putting out the laced syrup, you can always go back and check later in the evening. Turn off the lights in the space where you are serving them up their final meal, and with a flashlight you'll see a ring of ants usually around drinking up the laced syrup. They have a crop much like a bird, and they will fill that and then carry that back to the colony, and they will then regurgitate most of that syrup to feed dependent colony members as well as the queen. And there is a portal at the back of that particular crop where they can open it and actually feed themselves. So you don't get the instant kill that many people are desiring, because it takes a while for the boric acid to build up in the systems of these ants, because they're pretty large ants. So it takes about a week to 10 days, and then you'll have a complete ending of the activity in the home or near the home.
Great. Well, thanks both. I'm going to come back to Kirby. We had a question about seeds from China that have been in the mail. If you'd like to talk about that a little bit.
Yes, the seeds from China has been a big issue nationally. And the leading theory is this is a scam called brushing, where people receive unsolicited items from a seller who then posts false customer reviews to boost their sales or status on third-party platforms. So the concern from nationally from the USDA is that while many of these seeds may actually be common plants like tomatoes or herbs or cucumbers or something like that, some of them could be potentially treated seeds, or some could potentially be of an potential invasive species. So what the USDA is trying to do is collect as many of these seeds for testing as possible. So we're asking Connecticut residents if they're willing to forward the packages to our USDA Plant Protection and Quarantine Office for Connecticut that's in Wallingford. So the address for that is USDA PPQ, 97 Barnes Road, that's BARNES, Unit 200 in Wallingford, Connecticut, 06492. And I will say that we've received inquiries here at the experiment station from towns clear across Connecticut, And my deputy, Dr. Victoria, and I have probably handled almost going on close to 500 emails or phone calls relating to this. If anyone wants to follow up on this, we would prefer an email simply because it takes a long time to respond to phone calls.
Kirby, on the seeds, do you know that have most of the seeds been the same types of seeds, or is it different types of seeds in each sending?
It's a huge diversity of seeds. So, you know, seeds are lightweight, cheap, easy to ship. They're often marked as jewelry of some kind, occasionally a wire or some other item. There's a number of cases where people have actually ordered seeds through Amazon or Wish, didn't actually receive the seeds they ordered, and then suddenly, you know, like 2 months later, these Chinese seeds show up. But in most cases, they're totally unsolicited. And that's why I'm saying leading theory right now, it's the scam called brushing. Great.
Thanks very much. Had another question that I think you or Gail could work with, and is about maggot therapy. And I know you some interesting stuff that people might want to hear about.
Maggot therapy, yes, insects, most insects are actually quite beneficial to mankind, and some are actually of medical significance. Maggot therapy, I worked with a case with a gentleman in Fairfield County who had diabetes and a circulation problem in his lower legs. And what transpired was that he developed infections in his toes, which the hospital could not cure. They did surgery, they used all kinds of medicines. He was going in and out of hospital. And when he was in hospital, his wife on one occasion spotted this maggot in his toes. Basically, his feet were falling. And she called me and said, well, what is this? And I said, this is a blowfly maggot. And so what ensued was that we partnered with the doctor that was attending to him and a laboratory in Chicago, and they sent out therapy maggots that are sterile. That means they are completely clean of any kind of pathogens. His foot was caged, and the maggots were allowed to freely roam and medicate him. There were parts of the injury in his foot where the surgeons couldn't even reach. So they were considering amputation. These maggots got busy, and he described the sensation as very peculiar. It's something that actually you cannot put words to. And they were busy for about 4 or 5 days, and then they stopped feeding and they were removed. He completely healed and went home 10 days later. The marvel of these maggots is that they secrete antibiotic compounds as well as compounds that aid healing. And this conspired to him being completely cured and sent home, whereas Western medicine had failed to do that particular function. So insects can be extremely important in saving lives. They can also be important, Kirby, in inquiry as far as when folks have died. And so we both worked on a case of a murder in Connecticut as forensic entomologists, and that's the flip side of cure.
We've got another question about insects here, about houseflies, and can houseflies transmit diseases if they land on food being prepared to serve?
Shall I take that one? Yes,
Sure.
I'll take that one. Yeah, okay. Yeah,
well, you're live, so.
Yeah, well, houseflies can mechanically move pathogens on their feet. They got sort of spongy feet, so there's plenty of surface in which pathogens can get adhered to, and then they trot around on some unsanitized location, such as fecal material or cow pie, anything, and then fly up and help themselves to your burger, they're going to certainly transmit it. They also have the delightful effect of actually tasting with their feet. And so they're actually tasting it with their feet as well. So their feet for a fly is rather important.
Okay, and let's ask one final question while you're up, Gail. How about
Yes.
the murder hornets?
Okay, murder hornets. First of all, they are not here. Catherine and I have been fielding calls. Pretty well every other call has been, I have discovered a murder hornet in Connecticut. The murder hornet, or the Asian giant hornet, is in Washington State. It's been picked up. The Department of Ag out there is working in finding a possible colony, but they're not sure about this right now. It's only 1 or 2 individuals. That's 3,000 miles away on the other side of the curvature of the earth. They are not here. What we're seeing right now, and it's probably the result of a mild winter, are the eastern cicada killers, or cicada hunter wasps. I'm not sure whether you can see that easily. I'll bring it up to the camera. Can you see her? If you look at her abdomen, she's got 3 stripes that don't quite connect. She's generally black, and she has on her face, and I'm not sure you can see it, a little triangular spot on her face. Can you see that? The camera's not showing it very well.
Focuses.
Yeah, there's a little triangular spot just between the eyes. She also has sort of goldish brown wings. They're about 1.5 inches in length. Males come out earlier than the females, and they chase around after each other and joust and really carry on. It's quite a show. The males have no stingers, and in fact, a gentleman in Woodbridge had figured out that if he brings out his tennis racket, he can beat them out of the sky. But they are rather entertaining. And then the females come out about a week later. They're intent on motherhood's duty, which is to lay her eggs. And so what she will do is dig a tunnel in sandy soil, or soil that's in poor condition. So even though people are finding them in their lawns, they're thinking they've got good lawns. No, they haven't. If you look between the grass blades, you've got sandy soil that is lacking organic content. These are genetically programmed to find that type of soil. So if you have cicada killers working your property, it means there's a problem with your lawn or soil. So they're actually giving you a message. Once the female's finished digging her tunnel, she would then swoop up and fly to a tree and engage herself with a cicada, which is like you trying to pick up a truck. The thing is huge. And that's why these wasps are big, because they've got a big prey to deal with. She will then paralyze it and then attempt rather acrobatically to try and get this thing down her hole. And there are occasions where the cicada and the cicada killer will actually plunge to the ground because the weight's so heavy. She will sometimes climb back up the tree and then try and glide with the cicada back to her hole. It's a terrific effort. It's very entertaining to watch. And then she'll stuff it down the hole eventually and lay an egg on it. And that cicada will then become food for her offspring for next, who will then mature and then become adult wasps for next year. And then the cycle continues. The cicada killer wasps not only present at this time of year, they're timed for the cicadas. So when you start to hear that silvery afternoon whistle in the trees, those are the cicadas. You know the cicada killers will be out grocery shopping. I think is anything else you can add? That they are solitary wasps. So social wasps give wasps a pretty bad name, bees as well, because they have defensive aggression. If something disturbs their colony, they will become very aggressive. You'll have a lot of stinging on your hands. The cicada killers and other solitary wasps do not have this instinct. Each wasp is out for his or herself. So if you disturb a burrow of a cicada killer, she's not going to get in your face and start attacking you and trying to sting you. She's going to flee because she's the only one in charge of that burrow. So the good news is while they're large and intimidating, they are not aggressive, very, very low sting risk, if at all. And especially the males, which are the ones that I think cause the most intimidation due to their erratic flight. Oh, there's a big picture of one right now. Their erratic flight, they're all buzz and no sting. Male wasps and bees do not have the capability of stinging. Stingers are modified ovipositors, which is part of the female reproductive system. Males do not have the female reproductive system, therefore no stinger.
I may add to this because we're talking about stinging. You know, that we're coming into the autumn where colonial wasps, those are the yellow jackets, are more prone to stinging, will become more aggressive. They're coming to the end of their life cycle. I might add that wasp colonies only last 1 year and are killed with the first frost. They will not go through the winter like honeybees or bumblebees, which have a store of food. But people need to be aware when there is a stinging event. If you get stung, just put some ice on the site of the sting. That numbs it, also reduces the circulation. And usually you're pretty okay after an hour or so. You may find several days of irritation or itchiness. It's important not to use your nails when scratching, but just rub, because you can cause secondary infection with bacteria that are under the nails. One of the more unusual symptoms, if you have a reaction, allergic reaction, you need to go into the emergency room immediately. Obviously, if you get swelling of the limbs or watering or difficulty breathing, literally, as I say, beeline for the emergency room. You may only have 10 minutes. The other symptom of a serious allergic reaction is there's no reaction on the skin. There's pain, of course, but you get a sensation of impending doom. You need to take that symptom extremely seriously. Do not dismiss it. Get somebody to drive you to the emergency room immediately or get help, because that is a bona fide symptom of an allergic reaction to stinging.
I think I'm going to let Rose chime in if she's available, because we have another picture of a wasp, but she showed up about a golden digger wasp that she might want to talk about a little bit.
Okay, the golden digger wasp is very active right now as well on those pollinator plants that we hopefully all have in our landscapes. And Gail and Catherine, I don't know if you've had any people asking about getting stung by this, but I have not. I've just had people ask, you know, what is this wasp? It's very agitated, it has jerky movements, but seems to be a really good member of our community, pollinating plants and as an adult, and then a provisioning wasp for their young as well. So yeah, another interesting critter out in our landscapes.
Yeah, the great golden digger is one of our more beautiful wasps. She again is large and has been brought into this conversation of the murder hornets narrative. They're not very common. The numbers are increasing, but they're generally considered fairly rare. Again, not aggressive, just a very beautiful insect to enjoy on your flowers.
Agreed.
Another question for Rose while she's up is why my junipers might be yellowing.
Okay, I had, as Young Hao was saying earlier, it was a wet spring and a very cold, prolonged April with snow. May 9, as we all may remember, or we've maybe forgotten by now with all the 90-degree days. But I got a lot of junipers in this year that were ailing. And if you looked closely, following the yellowing dead stems down to the roots, you would see these swellings on the juniper stems. And while there are there's any number of the cedar apple rust, there's a cedar quince rust and a cedar hawthorn rust. Great fact sheet by Sharon Douglas. Now you can see the juniper sample that I got in, that small gall on the juniper stem, and then everything beyond that gall was dying. And so this fungus is infecting the stem and preventing any of the nutrients going beyond this point in the stem. So it is killing the junipers. Cedar quince rust, Young Hao, correct me here. One of the rusts is not as injurious to the junipers and way more injurious to the apple, quince, or hawthorn part of this mix. 2 plants are necessary for this disease to complete its life cycle. So again, cool, wet springs, and for management, if you can prune out these galls during the winter months before the first warm rain of spring gets them enlarging and getting ready to send off teleospores to the rosaceous host. So pruning out on the junipers where possible. That's not always possible given the rust that infects the whole stems of the juniper bushes versus cedar apple rust, which just has specific galls or growths. And then a second method of management would be to get the fungicides on the emerging foliage of your rosaceous host, be that the amelanchier, the hawthorn, the apple, the crabapple. Get that covered with some of the fungicides, mancozeb, chlorothalonil, or daconil, and following the directions on that. You know, if it's a cool, wet spring and an elongated spring, you might need to do 3 sprays of this fungicide 2 weeks apart, depending on rainfall and temperatures. But yeah, a lot of disease, and the cedar apple rust or the cedar hawthorn rust, cedar quince rust. Sharon Douglas has an excellent fact sheet on our website about these rusts with lots of great pictures and management information. Thank you.
Thanks, Rose. Go back to Jeff for our final question. We'll ask about barberry trees and what impacts barberries have on forests.
Am I up? Okay, there we go. So the impact of barberry with barberry bush, which was, barberry is an interesting, a little bit of a history. Originally, people in the States grew European barberry, but it was found the European barberry also contained a rust, similar to what Rose was just talking about, which attacked wheat and was killing all the wheat fields. So people used the very first herbicide that was ever used in the States. It was used to kill barberry, and they used to pour on between 50 and 200 pounds of salt on every barberry bush. So pretty amazing what they did to kill it back then. The big problem with barberry from a human health standpoint, and also for our pets like our dogs, is when you get dense stands of barberry out in the woods, we find that there's a much higher density of ticks. Again, I'm going to mention Dr. Scott Williams. He's the one that did the work. We first noticed this a little over 10 years ago. We're working out in the woods, and if you work out in the woods, you're used to getting a couple of ticks on you every day. When we were working out there in the barberry stands, remember one morning I had, I don't know, 2 dozen or more ticks on my legs by 10 in the morning, which is pretty freaky. So Scott did all the leg work, and we found out indeed that barberry stands have, much higher levels, much higher populations of ticks. which are infected with Burlap burdiferi, and Kirby, correct me if I pronounce that wrong, which is the causal agent of Lyme disease. Barberry also has some other effects on forest ecosystems. It increases nitrate leaching and phosphorus erosion. But I think the big one from the human health standpoint is the fact that those areas with dense barberry patches serve as reservoirs where tick populations, especially ticks carrying the causal agent of Lyme disease, live. And so, we've done a lot of work on controlling barberries so that you can reduce the risk of exposure to Lyme disease when you're going through those areas.
Thanks, Jeff. I'd like to thank all of our available experts who've been answering the questions and answers sessions. I'd like to urge our viewers to check out the rest of the program on our story map. And hopefully we'll see you all at Lockwood Farm next year for a real Plant Science Day rather than a virtual Plant Science Day. This will conclude the question and answer session. You can still respond to us by email, and we will still respond to questions as we always do. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.